All right, today we are diving into a really fascinating ancient system of logic. It's a system designed to help us cut through the noise and find what's actually true. We are talking about Nyāya, which is, at its heart, the science of how to think clearly. So let me start with a question that I'm pretty sure we've all experienced. Have you ever been so sure about something? I mean, 100% convinced. You've argued your case, you've stood your ground, only to find out later you were completely, totally wrong. It's a humbling feeling, right? And that feeling, it really gets at a much, much deeper problem. In a world that's just overflowing with information and opinions, how do we even begin to sort out what's true from what's false? How can we build a reliable path to knowledge we can actually count on? Well, it turns out this isn't a new problem, not by a long shot. Thousands of years ago, a school of philosophy in India dedicated itself to tackling this exact challenge. They wanted to create a practical, rock-solid system for reasoning, and they called it Nyāya. I want you to think of Nyāya not so much as a set of beliefs to memorize, but more like a toolkit for your mind. It's a complete system designed to help you build solid arguments, spot the flawed ones, and ultimately get to a much clearer picture of reality. So what does Nyāya actually mean? The name itself translates to right or just reasoning, and its entire mission is to critically examine anything we claim to know and to test it to see if it holds up against the rules of logic. It's really the science of proving your case. And the foundation of this whole toolkit rests on 4 very specific instruments for getting valid knowledge. In Sanskrit, these are called the pramanas. You can think of them as the 4 trusted vehicles that can actually get you to the destination of truth. First up, and this is the most fundamental one, is perception, or pratyaksha. This is the most direct knowledge you can possibly have. It's what happens when your senses, your eyes, your ears, your hands make direct contact with an object. You see the cup, you hear the music, you feel the heat. That's perception. It's the raw data from the world. Next, we've got inference, or anumana. This literally means knowledge that follows other knowledge. It's our amazing ability to know something we can't see directly based on what we can see. The classic example? You don't see the fire on the hill, but you see the smoke. From that smoke, you infer the fire. That's pure logic in action. The third tool is comparison, or upamana. This is basically learning through analogy, something we do all the time. Imagine someone tells you about a zebra. They say it's an animal that's kind of like a horse, but it's got black and white stripes. Later, you're out in a field, you see a striped, horse-like creature, and you think, aha, that must be a zebra. You've just used comparison to gain new knowledge. And finally, number 4 is testimony, or shabda. This is all the knowledge we get from a source, whether it's a person speaking, a book, or a scientific paper. But, and this is a huge but, Nyāya puts all the emphasis on that one crucial word, reliable. The trustworthiness of the source is everything. And this just raises such a critical question for us today, doesn't it? I mean, so much of what we think we know comes from testimony, from the news, from experts on social media, from our teachers. So how do we draw the line? When is that testimony a valid source of knowledge, and when is it just asking us for blind belief? Nyāya really pushes us to be critical consumers of information. Okay, so having the tools is one thing, but knowing how to actually use them to build a strong case and spot a weak one, that's the real skill. And this is where Nyāya gets incredibly practical and precise. So how do you build a completely solid argument? Nyāya gives us this beautifully structured 5-part method. Let's just walk through the classic example. You start with your proposition. There is fire on the hill. Simple enough. Then you give your reason. Because there is smoke. Now here's the crucial third step, the universal example. Wherever there's smoke, there's fire, just like in a kitchen. You're establishing a rule. Then you bring it back with the application. This hill has smoke, which leads you to the inescapable conclusion. Therefore, this hill has fire. See how airtight that is? It leaves no room for doubt. But of course, just as important as building good arguments is being able to recognize the bad ones. Nyāya is also an expert system for identifying logical fallacies. It calls them hetfabhasas, which literally means the mere semblance of a reason. It's an argument that looks good on the surface, but it's actually hollow inside. And this is where you can see just how relevant this ancient system is today. Take the fallacy called the erratic. This is when your reason is totally inconclusive, saying it's cloudy so it must rain. Well, that's a fallacy. Why? Because the clouds could just stay there, or the wind could blow them away. The reason doesn't guarantee the conclusion, or even better, the contradictory. This is when your reason actually disproves your own point, like saying sound is eternal because it is produced. Wait a minute, things that are produced have a beginning, so by definition they can't be eternal. Learning to spot these is like developing a logical superpower in today's world.
So, we have the tools for knowledge, we have the blueprint for a good argument, but you might be wondering, why go to all this trouble? For the Nyāya school, this was way more than just an academic exercise. The stakes were as high as they could possibly be.
You see, the ultimate goal of all this intense logic isn't about being clever or winning debates. The real point is to achieve moksha, a state of ultimate liberation, a final release from suffering. This completely transforms Nyāya from just a system of logic into a practical path to freedom. So how does that work? How does logic lead to liberation? Well, the Nyāya Sutras lay out this incredible chain reaction of suffering. It all starts with, number 1, misapprehension, basically seeing the world incorrectly. This wrong view leads directly to number 2, faults, like attachment to things we want and aversion to things we don't. Those faults then drive our number 3, activity, our actions. And that leads to number 4, the cycle of birth and rebirth, which ultimately results in number 5, pain and suffering.
But here is the profound insight of Nyāya. They argue that this entire chain is only as strong as its very first link, that initial ignorance. If you can use right reasoning, your toolkit, to smash that first link and replace it with true knowledge, the whole chain just collapses. The suffering has nothing left to stand on.
Let me give you the classic analogy that makes this crystal clear. Imagine you walk into a dark room and on the floor you see what you think is a coiled snake. That is the misapprehension. What happens next? Immediately you feel the fault, fear. And then comes the activity. Your heart pounds, you jump back, maybe you scream. The suffering is very, very real.
But then you manage to flip on the light switch. That light is true knowledge. And in that light, you see clearly it was never a snake. It was just a piece of rope all along. In that single instant of correct perception, what happens to the fear? It's gone. It completely vanishes because its cause was an illusion.
And that right there is the ultimate promise of Nyāya. Right reasoning is that light switch. It's a practical, powerful tool for getting rid of the illusions that cause our pain. It shows us that thinking clearly isn't just some intellectual game. It's a direct path to freedom. Which really leaves us with a final big question to think about. In our modern world, where we are absolutely bombarded with more information and more misinformation than any other time in history, could it be that this ancient science of reasoning is actually more essential now than it has ever been?
The philosophers of the Nyāya school certainly thought so. They were convinced that by sharpening the tools of our own minds, we could cut through all the confusion to find not just the truth, but true freedom, what they called the highest good. Thank you for joining us.